Okay, what's going on, everybody? We're here, we're live. I want to thank you all for joining me today. Hopefully, you can all hear and see me clearly. And if you can hear and see me clearly, please drop a one in the live chat if you can see and hear me clearly. And I also want to give a shout out to the new subscribers. I got some new subscribers that came in over the past couple of days. So you get to see me for the first time. As you can see, I'm not one of the people on YouTube who does content but never shows their face. I am a real person to a certain degree. You know what I mean? To a certain degree. But if you let other people tell it, I'm a Russian bot powered by artificial intelligence, and Chat GPT. And I'm also a Ron DeSantis loving MAGA Donald Trump worshiping, plant, right? Who's getting paid by Putin. But I see the ones are starting to come in. So as the ones are coming in, please make sure you hit the like button so that the bell, so that the notifications go out to all those that are subscribed to the channel, and that this video will also permeate throughout the YouTube algorithm, and we'll push this video out to those who need to see it and those that are interested in this kind of content. So please do that. Hit the like button. Also, if you're new to the channel, please make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification next to the like button so you'll be notified whenever I release a new video. Also, please make sure you share this video out on your social media platforms so that people know that I am currently live right now. And it also assists within the YouTube algorithm in the same way. And lastly, if you haven't already, please make sure you follow me on Telegram. I think there are close to 300 followers on Telegram that I have right now. By the end of this year, I'm looking to have 1,000 followers on Telegram. So please do me a favor, hit the link that is pinned in the live chat above, and also the link to my Telegram group will be in the description box, and after the live stream is over, it will be pinned in the comment section below. So now that's enough with the announcements. We can get into today's stream. So now I wanted to talk about Cornel West again. I want to run it back with Cornel West because recently, I want to say a couple of days ago, he was on Breakfast Club and he exposed AOC and Bernie Sanders essentially for being the kind of fake progressives that they are. Putting this live stream together was a little bit difficult for me because if you've been following this channel for any length of period of time, especially between 2019 and 2020, the last election, I exposed AOC and Bernie Sanders to the umpteenth degree, if that's a word, right? To the umpteenth degree. And I have so much content and just receipts, as people like to say, on them. So it's hard to just condense everything to just a few videos to prove this point. But I was able to do that. And I will keep the rest of my, bullets in the chamber as the election season continues on in case I have to put AOC and Bernie Sanders on notice once again. But I want to play this clip now, right, by Bernie Sanders. And I want you all to hear what he had to say about AOC and Bernie Sanders not supporting his campaign, despite the fact that he has always supported them, stood next to them, and co-signed them. But now, when it's his turn and he's running for president, they don't want anything to do with him. They're running with Biden. So let's hear what he had to say on the Breakfast Club, and then we're going to get back into the discussion. Now, and also there are currently 88 of you in the live stream right now. Please hit that like button if you haven't already, and let's get into this video.
Slicing the Democratic Party. Now, I was with Brother Bernie, as my dear sister knows, twice. They treated him badly. They treated him unjustly. They rigged the whole thing. You had Hillary Clinton and the others were going to ensure that he did not win no matter what. So at the core of the Democratic Party is a rot. And that rottenness is corporate greed. So when I hear AOC, I say, okay, she's part of that progressive small slice of the Democratic Party, but she's giving in to the perceptions of the corporate wing of that party. And the corporate wing says over and over again, all we have is two parties.
So just really quickly, she didn't give in. That's not what happened. AOC didn't give in, but I'll elaborate on that a little bit more as the stream continues on. So now let's get into what he actually said about Bernie Sanders. Now he elaborated a little bit more on Bernie. So let's get into that.
It's freaking frack. It's Tweedledee and Tweedledum. I love the brother, and you know, even in love, people have deep disagreements about these things. But I think again, he's fearful of the neo-fascism of Trump, and he just sees that somehow Biden. See, part of the problem is that people look at Biden, they don't really want to tell the full truth. If you say, okay, the Trump doesn't even have a bar, he's below the ground because he just gangster dead up. It's always said he was a gangster, so it's not a surprise. You know what I mean? And he's been obsessed with the 11th commandment, thou shalt not get caught. And it looks like he might get caught, but we don't know. We don't know. Most black folk would have done 1/100th of what he did.
Oh, come on.
And end up in jail. I got my dear brother Mark Ridley Thomas in L.A., the most powerful black politician who has been convicted for nothing under Biden's Justice Department.
So what Cornel West is explaining, and just also I want to make sure to say this as well, just in case YouTube gives me issues with playing that clip, I'll elaborate a little bit more on what Cornel West is saying, right? And my apologies if I have to actually mute that part of the video out. But, essentially in a nutshell, Cornel West is saying that they've given in, right? AOC has given into the Democratic corporate structure, right? As well as Bernie Sanders. He's given in, and he's just so terrified of Donald Trump and his neo-fascism. So they've given in. I'm going to push back against that a little bit. They haven't given in, right? It's not so much of the fact that they sold out progressivism and things of that nature. They didn't sell out. They were never a part of it to begin with. They never cared. They were always simply Democrats, nothing more, nothing less. When you look at the track record of Bernie Sanders, as well as his protege AOC, because that's all who AOC is. AOC is Bernie Sanders' replacement for the next generation. When you look at Bernie Sanders' track record, what his role is in the Democratic Party is to get the youth involved and get the youth ignited by way of progressive talk and progressive ideals that the youth tend to really be excited about, wanting to see come to fruition, right? And he gets the youth excited. And after getting the youth excited, what does he do like he did in 2016 with Hillary Clinton? He pulls out, he says, oh no, it looks like I can't win this race, but all of you guys go vote for Hillary. And he did the same thing in 2020 with Joe Biden. Same progressive spiel. He's talking his talk. Like I said, his role is to get the youth involved. And then when he sees that he can't win, when all of a sudden he realizes that he can't win because apparently the Democratic establishment is attacking him, which they're not because he's part of the Democratic establishment. What does he do once again? Oh, well, you all just go vote for Bernie Sanders, right? This time around, he's not even running for president. He's just telling his supporters straight up off the rip, go vote for Biden, right? Go vote for Biden. And AOC is doing the same. She co-signed Bernie Sanders in 2020 until they saw he couldn't win. And then she said, go vote for Biden. And now she's completely bypassing Cornel West as well as Bernie Sanders, bypassing him completely and just telling you all to go vote for Biden. Now, one of the reasons that I really wanted to make sure to make this video today is because I specifically want to speak to and address Black progressives, right? Black progressives who look at Bernie Sanders and you look at AOC and you see them as those who are on the right side of history. They're on the side of Black people and that they're not like the typical Democrats when they actually are. I want to speak to you all today, and I'm hoping that in today's expose that you'll come to see the light and understand who these people really are. And who they are is that they're just nothing more than your typical general run-of-the-mill Democrats who care nothing about the Black community, only to use the Black community to get votes. And so then after they get your vote, they can do nothing for you and push forth their own political agendas. Now, going back to what I said earlier concerning AOC being the protege, I believe the word I'm looking for, being the protege of Bernie Sanders, you'll see that Bernie Sanders and AOC, they act just alike, or I should say AOC acts just like Bernie Sanders. She mirrors him, right? One of the things that they like to do, and specifically one of the key things that Bernie Sanders used to love to do when he was running for president in 2020, as well as in 2016, is that he loved to pimp the name of Martin Luther King Jr., right? And AOC does the same. And there are a lot of politicians that do the same as well, such as Andrew Yang. But let's stick with Bernie Sanders and AOC. Bernie Sanders loved to pimp the name of Martin Luther King and would just swear up and down that he marched with King on Washington. He marched with King on Washington. He marched with King on Washington. The man did not know Martin Luther King. He didn't know anybody in King's camp, had nothing to do with Martin Luther King. He was simply one of a million other people who went to the March on Washington, who was way in the back looking from a distance. And now all of a sudden, when he's a politician, he's running around speaking as if he marched with King on Washington, like he knew him personally when he didn't. Well, for those of you who don't remember, he abused that talking point so much that one of the last times he used it, he actually got booed. I don't know how many of you all remember that, but I want to play that for you right now. He actually was booed when he abused that talking point.
For a Democrat running for president, there's already one rule: do not take any votes for granted. That is why 8 of the candidates running for the 2020 nomination showed up at the She the People Presidential Forum in Houston, organized by women voters of color. Senator Bernie Sanders learned a couple of other things at that event. Answer the question you were asked and do not name drop Dr. King.
What do you believe is the federal government's role to fight against the rise of white nationalism and white terrorist acts? And how do you plan to lead on that in your first year as president?
Okay.
Thank you.
First of all, but we have got to make it very clear that the type of demagoguery we are seeing from the Trump administration is not what this country is about. And I will do everything that I can to help lead this country in a direction that ends all forms of discrimination.
The core of the question is about, as president, what would you do with the rise of white supremacist violence to protect our communities?
Absolutely.
So just quickly, originally when he was asked that question, even though they have it, transitioned out, one of the things that Bernie would always do is that when he would be asked about questions concerning white supremacy or anything concerning Black Americans and Black people, or anything that would be, that we would find the most intriguing as far as political discourse is concerned, he would always move the goalpost and start speaking about something else. So what she had to do was redirect him back to, what are you going to do about white supremacy? Okay, because he started speaking on some other nonsense. And this is what he had to say. And this is also where he gets booed at.
As somebody who, I know I date myself a little bit here, but I actually was at the March on Washington with Dr. King back in 1963. And as somebody who actively supported Jesse Jackson's campaign as one of the few white elected officials to do so in '88, I have dedicated my life to the fight against racism and sexism and discrimination of all forms.
So as you saw when he name dropped King, because he would abuse that often, the lying talking point that he marched with King on Washington when he didn't, he was booed. And once again, as I was stating earlier, because AOC is a protege of Bernie Sanders, she has taken a play out of the Bernie Sanders playbook, right? Or a play out of the Bernie Sanders handbook. And as someone who has also begun in the past as well as presently to abuse the name and pimp the name of Martin Luther King Jr. as well for her own personal gain and for the personal gain of the Democratic Party. Watch this video right here. But before we get into it, there are currently 274 of you in a live stream right now. Please hit the like button if you have not already. Smash that like button if you have not already. And let's get into this video of AOC doing learning from her teacher, Bernie Sanders, on how to pimp the name of Martin Luther King.
Last night, yesterday, April 4th, marked the 51st anniversary of Dr. King's assassination. And I found myself reflecting on this deeply because it was in studying King as a young person that truly launched me to form a worldview that I have today. And I find so much of this present moment to really be a revival and a picking up of where King left off.
So that's one of the main talking points that I want to highlight real quick. With these new so-called progressives, right, like AOC, as well as Andrew Yang, they like to say that they're picking up where King left off, where you had Bernie Sanders, who would love to say, I marched with King on Washington, though that was a lie because you didn't know King, as Deneen Grant said. Why lie about things that can easily be debunked? They expect you to just not know any better. That's why, right? But whereas the older generation, like Bernie Sanders in the past, would lie and say I marched with King on Washington and that they were heavily involved in the civil rights movement when they weren't. That's another lie that I think Joe Biden likes to say. This new generation of progressives, the AOCs and the Andrew Yangs of the world, they like to fashion themselves as carrying on with the legacy of Martin Luther King, right? They love saying that. Let's get back into this clip by AOC.
That is what this moment is all about.
Let me just rewind it back a little bit since I interrupted.
And a picking up of where King left off. That is what this moment is all about. But for a figure that was so widely lauded and is so widely commended in our history, so much about King's legacy is hidden in plain sight.
That's right.
So much of what he did is not discussed in our schoolrooms. And we simply think that we knocked on a door and asked for the right to vote and got it.
Who is we? Who is we? Who is she talking about? Who is we? Let me run that back one more time. Wait a minute. We knocked on the door and asked for the right to vote and we got it. Who is we? I don't know what she's talking about. Who this we is. I know Black Americans did that in the civil rights movement, right, in the 60s, but I don't know what she's talking about.
In our schoolrooms. And we simply think that we knocked on a door and asked for the right to vote and got it.
You see, this is one of the tactics of the new age of progressives as well, is that what they do is they love to speak on King, pretending as if they are picking up where he left off, but they pervert the history of King, to which they then leave Black Americans out of it and turn the history of Martin Luther King into the history of people of color, minority, and marginalized groups. And ultimately, that's what you see the Democrats are doing with the history of Black America overall. But I'm not going to dive too deep into that because that's a whole separate video that I have for you guys. But you see the people of colorizing of Black American history. And that's what AOC is doing, speaking on the legacy of Martin Luther King when she's saying what we did, like we just knocked on the door and we got voting rights. No, that wasn't you. It was Black Americans. But let's carry on with this video and then we're going to get into some more stuff.
But we all know that that's not what happened. Moreover, April 4th, 1968, Dr. King was taken from us at just 39 years old. He was taken too soon. And as his daughter, Bernice King, reminded the world yesterday, his life was robbed by hatred, white supremacy, racism, apathy, opposition to economic justice.
Now, she goes on and on for a while because that lecture was an hour long, but that's what I wanted to highlight concerning AOC, right? She pulls from the book of Bernie Sanders because that's her teacher on how to pimp the name and the legacy of Martin Luther King and turn it to mean something else from its original meaning. They love to pimp the name of Martin Luther King, but they hate the people that he was actually fighting for. This is why you see in the past as well as in the present, but we're going to go back to 2020 right now when reparations was really a hot button issue on the election, on everyone's election campaign, right? Anytime you ask them about reparations, they get visibly upset, play dumb and play stupid. Once again, they love to pimp the name of Martin Luther King, but they hate the people who he was actually fighting for. Bernie Sanders would get visibly upset whenever you asked him about reparations. I have about 3 or 4 clips of him getting visibly upset whenever he was asked that. But I'm not going to go through all of them right now because that's not necessary. I'll just give you one of them. And here's one of the clips right here when he was doing a CNN town hall when he was running for president in 2020. And you can see his frustration with being asked that question. Let's get into that.
Reparations. I asked the question because Elizabeth Warren, Julian Castro, they've indicated they want
what does
to
that mean? What do they mean? I'm not sure that anyone's very clear. What I've just said is that I think we must do everything that we can to address the massive level of disparity that exists in this country.
I'll tell you what they mean, because Elizabeth Warren has said black families have had a much steeper hill to climb. We need systematic structural changes to address that. Julian Castro has said, I have long thought that this country would be better off if we did find a way to do that, reparations.
Well, I agree with what Elizabeth said.
So you would support reparations?
But read what she said. What does that mean? She means, I think, I don't want to put words into her mouth, is what I said.
Your position.
Why is he so mad? Why is he so irritated and hostile? He would regularly get pissed off like this. And one of the things that he would always say, that you heard him say earlier, and this was a tactic of Bernie Sanders, is that anytime he would be asked about reparations, he would say, well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? In a very condescending fashion, as if he's speaking to someone who's stupid. Well, what do you mean by that? And he's expecting you to not be able to properly articulate what you mean by that. But he would always be asked that question, or whenever he was asked that question, he will respond and play stupid as if he doesn't know what reparations is. But he knew what reparations was in 2012 when he attempted to get reparations for his people, you know, the people that Kanye West is having trouble with. He knew what reparations was when it came to them, but I don't want to jump the gun, right? I don't want to jump the gun. We'll get to that in just a moment, because what I want to do once again is go back to AOC, because I want to show you all how she follows just word for word, verbatim, the Bernie Sanders playbook. Okay, so now here is when she was asked about reparations back in 2020. Many of you have seen this clip already. I've played it numerous times. So this may be review for those of you who are not new to the channel, but for those of you who are new to the channel, here is, you know, a woman that many of you may many of you like, you know, and this is her response on reparations.
If we live in a country that's still 70% white, which is a number that I think shocks a lot of people, but if you include white Hispanics, it actually is that big, who often vote similarly to non-Hispanic whites. You know, what is a political cost, let's say, of saying we're going to throw your hat in with a program like reparations? How much do you think those considerations should be made?
Well, you know, it's a good question. I think that one of the things that we've seen from early polling actually is that I think that we should distance ourselves and start getting away from this idea that we should only care about ourselves. Because when we really do start to assert and believe and understand and see how our destinies are tied, we kind of get away from this idea that only, you know, people of color care about other people of color and only white people care about other white people and so on. There are a lot of systems that we have to dismantle, but also it does get into this interesting area of where we are as a country about identity, because like, what does it mean to be Black? Who is Black and who isn't, especially as our country becomes more biracial and multiracial. Same thing with being Latino, same thing. It brings up all these questions of like passing and, you know, things like that. But I do think it is important that we have to have substantive conversations about race beyond like what is racist and what is not. And if someone says something racist, does that make them racist? Like,
what is she talking about right now? You were asked a simple questions about your support for reparations, and all of a sudden she doesn't know what Black is anymore. I don't know what that is. What's Black? But let me let her finish. There's only about 15 seconds left.
We need to get away from talking, well, not that we have to get away from talking about racism. It's important that we talk about racism, but because we talk about racism so much, we actually aren't talking about race itself.
So when you ask these folks about reparations, they don't even want to talk about race anymore. Now they don't even know what black is anymore. What is that? What's black? What does that mean? Now, I bet you, and I'm willing to guarantee you, right? If for some unfortunate reason she had to contact NYPD and they said, can you give me a sketch of who did this to you, or who was responsible for said incident, right? And let's just say that the person responsible for said incident that she now has to give a sketch description of was black. I guarantee you she'll know what black is then, right? When it's time to go into a police precinct and she has to look at a lineup and point out who did what to her, right? I bet you she'll know what black is then, if that person so happens to be black. She'll be very crystal clear on that. She'll point straight to that person and say, oh, he's a foundational black American, descendant of American slavery freedman. That guy right there, the black guy, him right there. I bet you she'll be very clear on that then. But when it comes to reparations for the descendants of American slavery, all of a sudden she doesn't know what black is anymore. And as a matter of fact, we shouldn't even be talking about race. Why are we talking about this? We have to get away from speaking about race. Now, all of a sudden, you don't know anything about that, right? But I'll tell you when she does know about reparations. She knows about reparations when it's time to attach her people, Hispanics, onto reparations and attach them onto your history and your legacy to get the money to them that is supposed to go to you. And we're going to get into that in just a moment. But before we do, there are 462 of you in the live stream right now. Please hit the like button if you haven't already. Hit the like button if you haven't already. There are 462 of you here in the live stream right now. And also, I want to give a shout out and say thank you to Greg for showing love on Cash App. Greg was the first person to contribute to today's stream on Cash App. And O'Brien Tucker is the second person to contribute to today's live stream via Super Chat. Thank you all very much. I deeply appreciate your financial contributions to the channel. It does not go unnoticed and go unrecognized. O'Brien Tucker said she's literally making it up as she's going. Yeah, making it up and doing it. And she was doing a horrible job of it too. Doing an extremely horrible job of it, right? Horrible job, I might add. But now let's go back to what she was saying. Once again, when it comes to reparations, she doesn't know what black is anymore. She can't identify who's black, and she doesn't even want to talk about race. But I'll tell you, when she did support reparations, though, it was not too long after that. Actually, the very next year, she was all over reparations and who should get reparations. How many of you all remember this? Because I covered this way back when. But this is an article from April 3rd of 2020. And I'm going to self-censor myself a little bit. You know, I'm still scarred from 2020. I don't like to say that word here, highlighted. I don't say that word. So I refer to it as the Big 19. But AOC says, AOC wants Big 19 reparations. That sounds silly, but you know, it is what it is. AOC wants Big 19 reparations for minority communities. So just a few months back in 2019, she didn't know what black was, and she didn't even want to talk about race when reparations was brought up to her. But once the illness hit, right? When the illness hit, the Big 19 came around. All of a sudden, she was trying to advocate for reparations for minority communities. Now, let's go a little deeper into this article and what she actually said. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has called for Big 19 reparations for minorities, claiming higher numbers of Big 19 fatalities in lower income communities stems from underlying inequities, or I should say inequality. Big 19 deaths are disproportionately spiking in Black and brown communities, Ocasio-Cortez tweeted to her 6 million followers on Friday morning. Why? Because the chronic toll of redlining, environmental racism, wealth gap, etc., are underlying health conditions, the Bronx-born lawmaker added. And excuse me for laughing, but the only reason I'm chuckling is because it's just, amazing to me how these people can rewrite history. And like I said earlier, that's what you see a lot with these new progressives, right? The AOCs of the world. You saw it earlier when I played the video of her back in 2019, 2020, speaking about how the civil rights movement essentially was people of color, minorities, and marginalized groups, right? She said how we knocked on the door, right, and got voting rights, right? Once again, who was we? There was no we who got voting rights during the civil rights movement in the 60s. It was Black Americans who got it. But she's rewriting the history, and you could say people of coloring Black Americans out of it to make it seem like it was all of us, right? Minorities who did this in the civil rights movement, when it wasn't that. And you see the same thing is happening here now in this article when she's saying that Black and brown communities need to get reparations because of the historical inequities that stem from redlining, environmental racism, the wealth gap, etc. What is she talking about? Well, she's talking about the rewriting of Black American history to turning it into the people of the history of people of color, minorities, and marginalized groups, right? Let's carry on with this article because we're almost going to wrap this up. Inequality is a comorbidity. Big 19 relief should be drafted with a lens of reparations, she wrote. Okay? Big 19 relief, right, should be drafted with a lens of reparations. Remember, she didn't know what reparations was when it was specifically for Black American descendants of slavery. But when she was able to crowbar her people into it, now all of a sudden, she not only knew what reparations was, but she remixed Black American history and turned it into the history of people of color, minorities, and marginalized groups. Now, how many of you all remember this? I'm sure you all do, right? Because I've spoken about this often, and many others have after me, if I may pat myself on the back. But many of you all remember how Obama and Biden in 2012, I believe it was, no, 2015, Obama and Biden in 2012, they facilitated reparations to the tune of $12 million for World War II survivors, we'll call them, right? They facilitated reparations for them. But what many of you don't know, going back to Bernie Sanders, who consistently gets visibly upset when you ask him about reparations, what many of you don't know is that back in 2012, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton were working hard to get reparations for their people, who are the people that Kanye West is having issues with. Now, before I get into this article right here, please, there are 489 of you in the live chat right now, or I should say 497. Please hit the like button if you haven't already. Please hit that like button if you haven't already. And also, I want to thank Timothy Bright for being the third person to contribute to today's stream. Thank you very much, Timothy, for your contribution. Timothy stated, if we did receive reparations, I'm sure they'd be upset if we left America. They'd be pretty upset. You know, I agree with you on that. And also, thank you very much, Walter Wilborn, I appreciate your contribution, brother. I saw the super chat that you gave. I believe it was yesterday during yesterday's premiere. I appreciate you doubling down. Thank you very much, Walter Wilborn. But now let's get into this article right here concerning Bernie Sanders, right? Remember, when you ask him about reparations for Black Americans, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? He doesn't know what you mean, which is typically what everybody says. But he knew what it was back in 2012. Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders caused a stir when he told Fusion that he does not support reparations for slavery on the grounds that such a program would be very divisive and would never pass Congress. Ta-Nehisi Coates, a National Book Award winner and a writer of The Atlantic, who wrote the widely read article in 2014 making the case for reparations, was among those who took Sanders to task. 4 years ago, though, Sanders did support a form of reparations, not for descendants of African slaves and victims of other injustices against African Americans, but for World War II survivors and their family and the families of those who were killed. Okay. Now, that was back in 2012. The Vermont senator joined 18 colleagues in co-sponsoring the World War II Rail Justice Act. And it's not called World War II Rail Justice Act. It's the H word, but I'm sorry, YouTube is just silly, so you got to be careful. But the Vermont senator joined 18 colleagues in co-sponsoring the World War II Rail Justice Act, a bill to help survivors and families sue France's National Railway Company, SNFC, for reparations. Okay? So what I want to do is that I want to actually leave the link to this article in the live stream, because a lot of people are familiar with the fact that Obama and Biden helped facilitate reparations for World War II survivors. But many people are not aware of what Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton were up to back in 2012. So I want to leave that link in the live chat for you all right now, so you have access to this article. And, in closing, I just want to say this. For all of you, for those of you, Black folks, that fashion yourselves as progressives, I hope that today's stream was a lesson for you all, that a good majority of these folks, if not all of them, the ones that you see on the mainstream, they're not rocking with you the way that they say that they do. And by and large, when you're talking about the AOCs of the world, they're just Democrats, nothing more, nothing less. They gas you up on progressive ideologies and talking points just to funnel you into whoever the Democratic nominee is, whether it be Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden in 2028. I don't know, maybe I was going to say Kamala Harris, but that's not, people don't like Kamala Harris. They're definitely running with Gavin Newsom, though. So in 2028, you'll get Gavin Newsom. And I don't know, who knows, maybe in 2032, they might run it back with Kamala Harris and have Michelle Obama as a vice president. I don't know. I've heard these kind of rumors, swirling around on the Democratic side of the fence, but that wouldn't surprise me, right? But at the end of the day, they're just going to funnel you back into the same system that you're supposed to be trying to fight to change or get out of by being a progressive. These people aren't who they say they are. And Cornel West pretty much exposed that for what it is when he was on the Breakfast Club, acknowledging and exposing the fact that he stood behind these people all this time and all these years as if they were all on the same progressive page and wanting to change things in America. But when it was time to support him, AOC and Bernie Sanders were nowhere to be found. They had nothing for him. So for all of you that fashion yourselves as Black progressives, let this be a warning to you all. And with all that being said, that does it for today's stream. So I hope you all found today's live stream fruitful. Thank you all for those of you who contributed to today's live stream via Super Chat and Cash App. There are two more. I see it looks like Greg doubled down. So thank you very much, Greg, for showing love once again on the Cash App. And shout out to my big homie, Mo Fax. Mo Fax showed love as well on the Cash App. I appreciate you, brother, for holding it down for me. And thank you all for your support. There are 506 of you here right now. Please hit that like button on your way out. Share this video out on your social media platforms. Subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel. And with all that being said, that does it. I will catch you guys on the next stream. And at the buzzard, Timothy Bright, at the buzzard, Timothy said, if the Dems talk reparations, don't fall for it. They had decades to get it right. Don't trust them. Timothy Bright at the buzzard. I'll catch you guys later, man. Peace. Have a good night and stay safe.